Hello. Welcome back. Happy Friday to you. Welcome back to the Combat Footage Show. I'm Reni. I'll be your host. Once again, tap on the like button, drop in the chat. Let me know where you guys are chiming in from. It's good to see you. We're probably going to have a long show tonight. But we're here. And you look nice. I mean that seriously. Welcome back. What's going on? Checking in on the chat already. Here we go. Germany, Illinois, London, Wonkaland. It's weird. Poland, London. It's multiple from London. Laredo, Texas. Welcome in. Oregon, how are you? Mars. South Carolina. I'll be in your neck of the woods. First week of September. Actually, that's an interesting note to start the stream. If I already saw the question in the chat a little bit ago. You know, where have you been? Well, I had a 2-week trip I had to go on. I've got another one. It's not 2 weeks, but it is going to take away a Friday from us. I want to say that's Friday the 8th, if you will. I'll be competing in the Proving Grounds. Once or hopefully twice in the future, a year. I go and take all of my LARP kit and I enter myself into a 2-gun competition that includes fitness stuff. And this year, I'll be competing again at the Sawmill. So anybody that wants the smoke is welcome to come out to the Sawmill in South Carolina and compete with me. There'll be a special guest hanging out with me. But if you want to find out more about that, you'll have to come over to the other stream. Like I mentioned earlier, though, we've got a long show tonight. I suspect and anticipate that we might end up going, almost to 8 o'clock Eastern. Right now it's 6 o'clock, 6:02 Eastern Standard. But we're going to see a lot of stuff. We'll be seeing some footage from Moscow. We'll be seeing footage from the port of Reni, 800 meters from the Romanian border. That one's going to be interesting. We're going to see footage out of Kherson. We're going to see armored assaults, both Russian and Ukrainian. We'll see lone tank footage, Ukrainian and Russian. A ton of footage tonight. We are going to see some more FPV drone footage and wrap things all up at the very end. I think I do have a pretty interesting historical video for us to watch too. But the first thing that I want to talk about before we get into the footage is since we were last here, which was Monday. I don't remember what date Monday was. Today's Groundhog Day. I know that for certain. I think it was the 14th. But since we were last here, the announcement was kicked out that the United States has approved the transfer of F-16s to Ukraine. I want to talk about that for just a second. And I'm not going to dive into theory around whether or not it's a game changer. I tweeted out some thoughts about that earlier today. But I do want to clarify something because I'm already seeing it make its way around that Biden is sending F-16 to Ukraine, when in fact it's something quite a bit more simple than that. Biden has approved the transfer of F-16s, to Ukraine, specifically from Denmark and the Netherlands. Now, because the F-16 is export controlled, the United States has the ability to say, no, you can't give anybody that version of the F-16 that we gave you as a part of the agreement you signed when you purchased it. In order for any country to transfer F-16s to Ukraine, they need to get United States approval to do that. Biden has provided that approval while he was awake, presumably. But that's something that I wanted to clarify because I can already see all of the narratives forming and developing that Biden has himself, approved the transfer of U.S. F-16 stocks to Ukraine. You could actually spend an entire couple hours, talking about the capabilities of the F-16 as they relate to air defense and anti-air capabilities of Russia. The most pertinent note is that the F-16 is something of a jack of all trades. It doesn't do any one thing extremely well. But what it does provide is it does provide a simplified logistics trail and a simplified armament support structure for Ukraine that they don't currently enjoy with their Soviet-era systems. The United States and the West are currently, and in the future even more so, having trouble, or will have trouble, continuing to provide spare parts for the MiG platforms, former Soviet-era platforms. Those are the only pertinent notes that I had on the F-16 that I wanted to cover And I don't know if I summarized them in my brain as well as I wanted to, but what I'd like to do is I'd like to dive into tonight's footage, because like I said, we've got a lot of it. Welcome back. Tap the like button. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Let's jump over to the map. We're going to be starting in the port of Reni tonight. Here you are. Like I mentioned, the port of Reni. Oh, and I'm gonna be enabling a filter. I actually caught a comment on the VOD that said I like to use a different map because it shows fortifications. Well, one of the things that I love about this map is you can enable Russian fortifications. So we'll talk more about that when we get there. But for now, we're actually going to be looking at Reni. Reni is a port that across the Danube is really only about 800 meters from Romania. Well, Reni was struck once again by shahed drones. That footage is coming up for you guys right now.
Reni!
Those are grain silos that just got impacted there. I think there's a longer version of this video that I saw earlier. I wouldn't be able to translate it for you. I think some of the comments tried to translate it. And if the comments and translation in the comments are accurate on, you know, those other versions, these guys are actually cussing Zelensky right now. I just thought that was pertinent and interesting. Don't quote me on it because, again, I did not do the translation or, you know, request the translation. But once again, you're danger close to Romania here. A likely reason to use the shahed rather than, you know, a cruise missile. All right. Let's bring it back up. Now we're going to be jumping straight into Kherson from there. Like I told you, we're going to fly through the footage tonight because I've got a lot of it. In Kherson, along the river, there's a little bit of a cat and mouse game between a Russian boat. Again, it's a boat. This is a boat. And a Ukrainian drone. I've got no sound to this one. We're going to see another perspective of this a little bit further east along the Dnipro. This is, you know, out on the west, towards western Kherson, if I recall correctly. Is it a boat? That's a boat. They're all boats. Now, we don't get to see anything from, you know, a top-down perspective. I don't think. No. We don't get to see anything from a top-down perspective. It looks like it might actually, if it does hit on the, you know, that rear left side. What's that in Navy? Left and right. I never remember which one's port and which one's starboard. I don't know. The left side of the boat, because it's a boat. But a little bit further up in, you know, an area that I cannot pronounce. Near the rail bridge. Coming up for you guys here in a second. We'll just watch the strike first, and then I'll get it pulled up on the map. Because I really cannot pronounce this area. Heavy Russian strikes. So we're going to see a lot of artillery footage tonight. And I mean a lot of it. But this is in Kherson. It's Prydinprovske. 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 Right has more letters than left. So does starboard. Therefore, right equals starboard and left equals port. Boom, I win. That's a super easy way to understand that. I actually want to bring up Google Earth for this one, just to give you guys a better perspective. So stand by and let me get Google Earth rolling really quick. Because I think that provides a lot of context, and Google Earth's imagery is better than what they have on Deep State. Here you are. So this is a rail bridge here. There's your strike location. That obviously is no longer intact. Right, now you're pretty close to Antonovsky. Here. This is the Antonovsky Bridge, which is no longer intact as well. And this is your strike location here. All right, let's bring it back up. We're going to head, we're going to shift on the map already again to Prymorske, where we're going to start to see some HIMARS strikes from Russia. Once I get the map to cooperate with me. There we are. Here you are. So this is Prymorske out here. We're going to see a series of HIMARS strikes. Now, what I'll note about this one is there's a training area out this way. The video that I'm about to show you guys is going to be a little bit not safe for work. All right, just largely based on how it impacts, there are going to be deceased visible. Discretion's advised on this one, but there's a training area out that way that received a visit from M30A1, which is the alternative warhead. 182,000 tungsten steel BB-sized balls. Discretion advised. So you can see the spread on those, right? That's going to be important to note on the second strike. You can see the multiple casualties from that. Something that I've tried to research in the past that I didn't come up with a whole lot, and it wasn't a lot of, very deep dive research, is for the alternative warhead M30A1, what the kill radius of that is. And there's that second strike. Now that gives a really good perspective from almost on a kill radius perspective. You can almost tell the direction that it came in. But I saw this making its way around a few accounts that said, only the one building was hit. And, we don't even know if there was anybody inside. Well, I can guarantee you that all of these buildings are not okay. And subject to the material of the buildings, the occupants inside are not okay. Let's bring it back up. We're going to see a few more HIMARS strikes here. The next one, same general area. We're going to shift a little bit to the southeast, to Ulianivka. Let me see if I can get that up on the map for you. Still in Kherson. Yep, here you are. So I guess it's directly east, not southeast. So we were just over here near Prymorske, and now we're shifting over towards Ulianivka. Ulianivka? Now this one, I believe, is also the alternative warhead, M30A1. Targeting a Wasp. The SA-8 Gecko. That's the NATO name for it. Right, it's the 9K-33 OSA. OSA, which translated literally means Wasp. It's an anti-air system. It's got about a 15-kilometer range, or that's 9 miles in freedom units for those that need that like I do. Up to 15 kilometers or 9 miles. Specifically, the missile fired from that is the 9M33 and its family. No audio to this video, though. Then we're going to have one more HIMARS strike right after this one. What's going to be interesting on this next one, though, is we're going to do a little bit of range measuring. All right, I'm going to bring that next one up more or less right away here. It's in Oleksandrivka, which is a little bit further to the east. Now, these are going to be S-300s, and the beginning of this video, for the first, minute and a half here, is really just showing you each of the S-300s that get hit. So we're kind of going to scroll through that. But it includes the radar as well. Some of those systems, and we'll play from here. And there's a reason, and I don't show this type of footage very often, the really far out drone view footage. Oftentimes it's difficult to make out what's being targeted, what we're seeing, what we're looking at. But there's a reason that I'm going to show this, and we'll have to go to the map for that reason. There's one of those radars. I believe that's the first to get hit. First impact down here. Second impact up here. See an operator kind of unassing that area off to the top of your screen, top left of the screen. Two of the launch vehicles. Yeah, in this case, the drone camera is very good. Yeah. Now let's bring it up, and I want to head to the map for a second, because we're going to measure something. And there's a point to this at a deeper level. Let's go to Oleksandrivka here. Okay, I'm going to pull out my measuring stick. Put a dot close to this. Put a dot I don't know, maybe out here. We're starting to get on the upper edge of the HIMARS range. And, you know, in fact, this might not be the right Oleksandrivka. Might have been this one. No, we had it right. Nope. My goodness. We'll get it all figured out, I promise. Just go back down here, because I've still got it marked. We're starting to get on the upper edge of the published range. Now, the likelihood of a HIMARS being, you know, pulled all the way up to here, in my opinion, is relatively low. But as soon as you start to kick that back, you're kind of quickly at the 70 kilometer published range. You can do it, Ronnie. Maybe. Anyway, I always like doing that. I always like taking, you know, a note on what the claimed system was, and then I take the published range, and, you know, it helps me understand where it might have come from. Right? Anywhere in this area here. It shows the value of HIMARS, which I think is cool. I'm a nerd like that. All right, let's bring it back up. And we're going to keep shifting now. We're going to be headed up to Dnipriany, which is just southwest of Kahovka. I've already got that on the map here. Right here. We're going to see a bunch of footage here. You know, historically, when we talk about Dnipro and footage in and around the Dnipro, we've seen a lot of Antonovsky. But we've got quite a bit of footage coming from right here, including in these islands. But first, more boat stuff. Let's bring it up. And here comes the footage. This is a Russian boat that we do see the impact of the drone. Keeping the sound off on this one too. So just to kind of explain further why I keep the sound off. I really, really enjoy having the live chat after the show for people that watch the VOD. Believe it or not, an overwhelming majority of folks that watch these streams do so after the live show is done. What ends up happening, if we get a copyright strike, and there's the impact there, if we get a copyright strike and I have to mute that, that removes the live chat replay. So I try to just keep from having to worry about the copyright claims as much as possible. All right, let's bring it up. But we're not moving really from that area. We are going to go back to Google Earth really quick, just so I can show you a few things here. Full screen. There it is. So this first strike, we're going to see a series of Russian strikes on Ukrainian positions. This first strike is going to be in these islands here, you know, somewhere out in this area. The second strike is actually going to take place, you know, right up in here. This is what I was saying about preferring Google Earth imagery. You know, if we were to compare this with Deep State, like Deep State gives us, when it loads properly, a little bit of fidelity, but we have just so much more here. And I think for the future, I'll probably keep both of these up. But let's watch these artillery strikes. First one's coming up now. Again, these are Russian artillery strikes on supposed Ukrainian positions in the water. There. More? That might be the same strike. But another further to the east, up in that little town there. Here. Now, everybody, this is actually one of those times that I am going to play the sound. If you guys recall the K2 battalion, K2 released, the battle for Cyclops. They released the battle for the T position, and they augmented a lot of that footage with audio, right? And Russians were making fun of it. I just want to play this for you. We're going to listen to this audio. Some audio for you. More artillery. Now, all the initial report said was artillery. I believe these to be potentially FABs. These are very large explosions, maybe FAB 500s. Let's bring it up. Speaking of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which I'm going to take you guys to here now. Right up here. You say that Enerhodar? In here. Nuclear power plant. Right here. We're going to see some footage of Russians operating in and around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, conducting training exercises, presumably planning to defend the plant should they need to. I just thought this was interesting footage. Coming up now. I don't know if this is copywritten or not. It probably is. We're going to turn it off. Now, they do have OP4, opposing forces, reenacting here. Not these guys. These are the OP4. Oh, he died. He's got, like, really baggy pants on. Is this training? Correct. Yeah, so this is footage of Russians training at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant for presumably defending it. This looks like recovery training. That was a rubber band tourniquet. Maybe a variation of the S-Mark tourniquet. Some Evac training there. There. All right. So we're going to pause here for a second, and I need to check in on the support. And guys, I told you the challenge that I was going to have based on... Let me see if I can revert the alerts back to the previous... I can. Excellent. So Stream Elements changed the alert style, and it doesn't allow me... Nope. Doesn't allow me to see the amounts on your super chats, and I'm sorry for that. So if I didn't catch them in the chat, all I can say is thank you. Gunslinger, thank you for all 4 of your super chats. That's all I can say, because I don't see the amounts over here anymore. Might be able to check viewer activity. I can do it right here. Gunslinger, thank you for the 762. Appreciate you, brother. All right, let's jump back to the footage because we're heading over to Robotyne, 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 whatever. Here we go. I don't have a whole lot of footage from Prydinprovske still. Just not too much from this area. But from Robotyne, we have quite a bit of footage. Now we're going to be actually starting out on the east here. We're going to see two tanks assaulting towards two Ukrainian tanks. I want to say this footage is actually about right here. Two Ukrainian tanks assaulting towards Robotyne. I'm going to just keep saying Robotyne. You guys know at this point where I'm talking about. Until they start to receive contact. One of the tanks is going to get hit. The second tank is kind of going to get out of there. Assaulting to the west here. So one of those tanks has been hit. The second tank is tearing off back to the east. Now, that's not going to be it for tanks, though. We've got Russian drone perspective footage here of a pretty heavy-looking tank battle that it looks like was going on for quite some time. Now, the first video that we're going to watch here is about 2 minutes long, and it's going to show, and I'll talk through a little bit of this because it's kind of chaotic, but it's going to show daytime footage of this tank battle, and then we're going to follow up with a second video that shows the same area still, the same battle still going on. So these vehicles that you're seeing out here, these are all Ukrainian vehicles, if I understand this video correctly. These are all Ukrainian vehicles, but down here at the bottom of your screen, right next to this abhorrently large watermark, you're going to see a Russian tank come into the frame. There it is after a jump cut. Got a Ukrainian tank, I believe, entering from up here. And another. They might be BTRs. You know, what pixel tells me what they are is difficult. But without them firing like a main gun or something, my eyes have a difficult time telling. This tank is continuing to fire on these vehicles. I believe one was a BTR. Yeah. So if I'm not mistaken, the very first vehicle that was coming from left to right was the BTR, based on the initial report. And that's a hit. London Water, thank you for the 5, sir. So let's move to that second video, which shows it's really dusk, if you will, but just as crazy. There's no sound to this one. Well, there's music, but we're not going to play the music. Now, again, this is if I'm not mistaken, along the east to west approach. And we're going to see some much better quality footage, presumably after not necessarily this action, but other attempted armored assaults for Ukraine here on the next video. That was a rocket that you just saw. There's another tank. Or another vehicle. I can't tell if it's a tank or not. That was hit. But something that's notable is there's also infantry in the trees here. So that rocket that you saw right to left originated from these trees. And presumably these trees as well, which is what this tank is firing at. This tank just got hit. There went another Ukrainian vehicle. All right, let's bring it up. I want to show you guys some perspective footage here. This isn't necessarily combat footage, but it shows some aftermath. Not necessarily, again, of this specific action, but along that eastern approach towards Robotyne. It hasn't been easy. This is a Ukrainian perspective. These are demining vehicles. So you'll see, demining equipment on the front of them, which makes them, really, really vulnerable. This area, it's important to note, though, is now held by Ukraine. So these vehicles, subject to their, states inside, would theoretically be recoverable. A lot of folks make comments about, the vehicles being able to be recovered, seeing the outside of this. But what you also need to take into account is the internals. Are the internals just absolutely fried? Did something punch through and set everything on fire inside, and the fire's just out now? Even if you can recover it, if you can't operate it, are they blown up? Yes, in some fashion. They've either been hit by, mines, given that they're demining vehicles, that would make sense, or in the process of demining, which is something that not a lot of people give credit to in discussion. In the process of demining, you're doing that at, 5 miles an hour. It just turns into an absolute turkey shoot for artillery, which is the purpose of minefields. Minefields are ultimately to steer your opponent. You steer them towards avenues of approach that you have predefined or pre-dialed in for your artillery. It's a function of what Ukraine is dealing with right now. Let's bring it up, though. Now, in Robotyne, Russia has been actively shelling Ukrainian positions. So this should really tell you one thing, that Ukrainians have achieved at least the outskirts of the city. This is Russian perspective. You'll see Ukrainians moving in and around these two buildings here. Which is why Ukraine targets Russian artillery so much. Yep. Those are shaping fires. That's what that would be. That's a city. That's kind of the outskirts. And I would say that Robotyne is probably a town. I don't really know what the differentiation between a town and a city would be. You know, like what's the definition there? Village. Okay, Paul. I would say Robotyne is a little bit bigger than a village. Should call off this counterattack. Clearly failed 3 months in now. I actually tweeted some thoughts about that. A little bit longer of a write-up. And I don't think that you can say it's failed. I don't think that you can say it's been a success or has met expectations either. You know, I'd recommend going and reading that because it's much more concise than I could deliver to you now. But I did a comparison of, you know, the attempts to take Bakhmut. Bakhmut is about 36 kilometers squared. And that's an overestimate. So that is being generous with the total size of Bakhmut. This is just data. I'm just giving you data. So far, in Ukraine's counteroffensive, they've retaken 488 kilometers squared. Now, for the action in Bakhmut, it took them approximately 11 months to do that. It's been 2.5, almost 3 months worth of the counteroffensive for Ukraine. So 488 kilometers squared over open ground, dealing with minefields and dialed-in artillery, equipment losses, all of it. Slower progress than a lot of people expected. You know, there were expectations on, quote, both sides for that. And then you look at Bakhmut, 36 kilometers squared, 11 months. You know, Prigozhin himself talked about the defense in depth. It wasn't an easy one for Russia to do, for Russia to take. And you can also make the argument that each of those, in different ways, are harder or easier to do. But the direct comparison, when you boil things down like that, puts things into perspective. What Ukraine is dealing with right now is an issue that any military in the world would have. Any military in the world, given the same constraints and restrictions that Ukraine has, would be in the same situation. If you effectively swapped Ukrainian soldiers with any other country's soldiers without making any other changes, they'd be in the same boat. Being able to conduct a full combined arms breach against what Russia has put in place in Zaporizhzhia would necessitate massive amounts of all domains of capability. All domains. Ukraine is operating without two, effectively. They have no navy, right? No support from the sea, and they have no air. So in my mind, you can say that the counteroffensive has failed expectations and unrealistic expectations that a lot of people had for it. Sure. Were those expectations, you know, founded in the success of Kherson and Kharkiv? From a Russian perspective, you know, a lot of pro-Russian accounts had expectations of being a, quote, punching bag. That's a direct quote. Being a punching bag for a little while. And they're now reveling in what looks on paper to be very few gains. 488 kilometers squared is not a small amount of space, especially given the circumstances. Anyway, that's a very poor summary of the write-up that I put out, you know, just a few hours ago. Let's move on, though. More artillery in Robotyne. And again, the artillery in Robotyne is really just indicative of Ukrainians being in the village, in the town. Bringing it back up. I had the weird screen flippy thing happen to us again. Just stand by and I'm going to check in over on the support while we're waiting for that to figure itself out. And it's back. Of course it is. We're going to jump to the next video, but first I want to check in once again. London, thank you for the $5. Gunslinger, thank you again for the super chat as well. Let's move on to the next video, and I have 3 strikes, 3 Russian strikes inside Robotyne proper in the stream description for you guys. We're only going to look at one of them, though. Just the first one that's listed. Coming up for you guys now. All right, let's bring it up. But we're not leaving Robotyne just yet. We're going to be watching a man-pad strike here to the southwest of Robotyne. I want to say it's, I don't know, maybe a kilometer, 2 at the most. Actually have sound to this one.
Yes, блядь! Красава!
Now, if you're wondering what the f just happened, well, that was a KA-52 getting knocked out of the sky. Here's the footage. Here's some different footage of that. There's the strike. Now, one of the 2 pilots, either the pilot or the weapons officer, I'm not sure which, was able to eject. Let's watch the strike one more time. Now, what's interesting about this is Russia came back for that pilot just about immediately following it. You know, Josh and I were talking about this earlier, and, you know, turning that alligator back around and flying back through where your wingman just got shot out of the sky, it's almost undoubtable that these 2 pilots, you know, were drinking buddies or something. Three question mark? It might be, you know, crew from this chopper, you know, went out to meet the pilot. But, you know, the Russian sources that released a lot of this footage noted that one of the 2 did not survive. I just don't recall whether it was the pilot or the second seat, the weapons officer. What would theoretically be the weapons officer. All right, we're going to shift on our map again to Urozhaine. I think I got pretty close with that one. Coming up here, where we have a bit of footage, a bit more. So that's what I have for you in Robotyne. It was the weapons officer. The weapons officer survived, or the weapons officer was killed. So, we were just in Robotyne, and that KA-52 was shot down, I want to say around about in here. Is that about a kilometer? Yeah, 1 to 2 kilometers. Nailed it. All right, now let's go to the east, to Urozhaine. We're going to be starting about right here. We're going to see a lone Ukrainian tank kind of make its way down along the riverside here. It's going to engage Russian positions in Urozhaine before eventually receiving artillery and pulling back out. Now, this is obviously going to be a couple days old, given that Ukraine is confirmed to hold the entirety of the town. But it's not footage that we've reviewed here, and it was just released right after our last stream. So it's relatively new footage. Pulling it from our Twitter. There's video of both pilots getting evac. Don't believe that Ukraine officer crap. That I'm actually repeating a Russian source that said that one pilot was killed and the other one was evacuated. And only one pilot can be seen ejecting from the aircraft. Big boom. Again, that Ukrainian tank skirting the riverside. Almost a harassing attack, if you will. Turn around and unasked that impact area. Was that one of our Abrams? No. No, Abrams aren't expected to arrive in Ukraine until sometime in September. More footage from the town. Just going to call it the town. These are going to be Russian dismounts. Blinky screens. We didn't have this issue all day Monday, but today it wants to act up and give us a bunch of problems. I don't even know what you're looking at. You could be looking at me. You could be looking at something entirely different right now, and I have no idea what it is. But this footage, you'll see a team of about 3 Russians that are moving in Urozhaine. I don't know. It's about mid-city, and they turn right and start to head south, but they begin receiving Ukrainian artillery. This is recorded by a Russian drone. Now, one of those, what appeared to be submunitions, impacted really right on top of these guys, right here. Let's bring it up. Now, some more footage of the town. Just going to call it the town. That is a little dated at this point, a week old, if you will. But it was released, shortly following or potentially even the same day of our last stream. Sometimes I miss stuff that's released the same day of a stream because I'm typically going back in time to try and catch everything prior. These are Russian strikes on the town. Most likely MLRS or Grad. Village, bro? I mean, it's kind of big for a village, isn't it? Call it a town. Village is probably better. This is probably Grad that we're looking at. We watched it a few times through at this point. But you can this does a little bit of service to, or justice to, understanding the spread on, the Grad, if that is what we're looking at here. You got impacts all the way out here. Impacts over here. And still impacts, in the middle of it. But Russia also used FABs to hit the village town as well. Defender, thank you for the $23.99. And Carl, thank you for the 20, sir. Thank you guys both. Oh, wow. Big boom. And something that's notable is I had a back and forth Twitter conversation with somebody that's in Ukraine right now. I'm not going to drop names, but one of the things that he was really trying to impress upon me and stress was that an overwhelming amount of the footage that we look at, the big footage that drops that day and everybody's sharing it around, under a lot of circumstances is a minimum of like 72 hours old. So that's always important to take into account, is what we're watching here, and definitely with this footage, transpired days and sometimes weeks ago. That being said, there's every once in a while, you'll still get stuff posted to TikTok by either side that is a little bit more real time. But a lot of this stuff is going to be a little bit dated. Now we're going to shift the map to Prymorske. Don't know if that was good or bad. Let's shift on our map. To here. Ish. So we were just down here. And now we're going to be right here. Now this arrow. We're going to see a Russian armored column. These arrows I find that they correspond actually really well with footage that I end up finding when I, find the footage, and then I'll jump to, Prymorske. And I just happen to see arrows, like exactly where that footage is. So this is a Russian armored column that makes its way up to Prymorske. Oh my goodness. Screens. I appreciate you. Thanks for your patience. Coming back. Here we go. Perfect. So this Russian armored column makes its way up to Prymorske. But once it reaches its objective area, which this is just the drive, once it reaches its objective area, things start going a little bit crazy. And I think what you're seeing here is actually a mixture of Ukrainian artillery and Russian artillery, because these are Russian vehicles. And the reason I believe that it's a mixture of both Ukrainian and Russian artillery isn't gonna come into play until we get towards about the last 20 seconds of this. Now this lead tank, it's engaging along the tree line. It's going to hit a mine, and it's going to get impacted, according to the original source, by an RPG. So it hit a mine, which has already happened, and it's also going to get hit by an RPG, and it continues to fire. DC Williams. Thank you, sir. Now, that's when the TOS-1A starts hitting the Ukrainian positions. So those are more than likely thermobaric. You've got that Russian tank here that had hit that mine, continued to fire down this line of trees, and then the thermobaric hits. All right. Let's bring it up. Now, inside of the town, Prymorske, and DC Williams, thank you again. I just don't know any other way that I could express the amount of appreciation that we have for something like that. Thank you for that. Very unnecessary. This stream's free, guys. So when you guys do send in, a few dollars here and there just out of generosity, it's above and beyond and appreciated. Thank you. So inside the town here, this is a Ukrainian observation post. Now, the Ukrainians are using equipment here. Right? I'm not sure exactly what type of observation equipment it is, but the original source was very specific about the use of the equipment rather than humans, and essentially posited that not even your equipment will be able to hide. And these are artillery strikes. Now, other Ukrainian positions in Prymorske being hit by artillery as well. I told you we were going to see a lot of artillery tonight. It's the same unit. The 9th, Russia's 9th. Lukens. Thanks very much for hitting the member button. Appreciate that. Does Funker have merch? Stay tuned. We're starting to get very close to launching our new line. We had it for a little while, and then partnered with a new merch partner. And we just approved all the designs within the last, like, 48 hours. I'm getting 404 message for merch. Yeah, we need to just disable that link. Lucence, thank you for the 20. Are you going to use fourth wall? No. No. You're eating a few mines. We're going to see you meet another one later on. We're going to shift on our map here, though. We're moving a little bit further north towards Andrivka. Now, I want to say this is a part of the assaults. So last stream, one of the things that we talked about were attempted Russian assaults on Andrivka, which is by Klishivka, and I haven't shown you that on the map, and I realize that, but I will. And as a part of those assaults, I should have given you a discretion advised. I have it in my notes. Apologies for that. As a part of those assaults, some of the artillery from Ukraine was hitting dismounts. So again, that was Ukrainian artillery. Let me show you where Andrivka is on the map. Just to the south of Klishivka. Here you are. Those Russian assaults that took place out to the east here left a kind of a trail of Russian vehicles. That footage we just watched was all a part of that as well. Now, I've got more. This one, I will give you the discretion advised. Discretion advised for this. This one's going to show a Russian vehicle that gets hit by an FPV suicide drone in the vicinity of Andrivka, exactly where, I'm sure somebody could geolocate. But what's kind of not safe for work about this is going to be pretty obvious. A man is caught on fire. See the strike? Reni, if you could fire any vehicle's weapon for fun, what vehicle would it be? I'd like to fire an Abrams. Or a tank. I don't care. I just want to shoot a tank. All right, let's bring that back up. Now we're going to shift into Klishivka, just to the north. This is footage, helmet cam footage of, believe it or not, the Ukrainian police. More specific, I want to say the Tsunami Assault Regiment assaulting Russian positions near Klishivka. I've got no sound for this one for some reason. There might not be sound to the video. In fact, let me pull it up because I believe we also have this on the website. We might have a sound version. All right, let's bring it up. Wasn't able to find that, at least quickly. RL, thank you for the 50. Appreciate that very much. To the north, thank you. I wish I had better words. I really do. All I can say is thanks. Thanks for being here, first and foremost, for everybody that's here. We appreciate that very much. We're just trying to share the footage that we find. That's it. Now, to the north of Klishivka, you've got Russian artillery hitting Ukrainian positions in the woods. Now, I actually kind of want to show you this on the map. So and I'm going to use Google Maps for this. All right. Here we go. Let me reorient this. So this footage you're going to watch, I want to say takes place either in this grouping of trees or this grouping of trees. I'd be willing to bet it was this one. But in my notes, I put that it was to the north, which would lead me to believe that it was this group of trees. Anyway, just to give you some better perspective of Andriivka, which is where we just were here. We've actually seen quite a bit of footage coming out of Andriivka. This is the location of that, Russian assault, or, some were saying, reinforcement, presumably reinforcement to eventually Klishivka. That's where that took place. We also last stream saw some footage of, a 3 Vic Russian assault here across this field. But we're going to shift to some Russian perspective footage of artillery that takes place in one of these 2 tree lines. Here you are. David, thank you for hitting the member button. Talk about something besides Ukraine. Well, I mean, that's kind of the function of our channel to do that, right? We are, we do war. War is the only thing that we do cover, have covered, and will cover. The channel has been alive and done that since 2007. We were here, publishing videos on YouTube of combat footage long before, Russia invaded Ukraine. And we're going to continue to do that. Now, given that the war in Ukraine is the biggest war that we have going on in the world, the amount of footage that we have from that for discussion is just so much. There's such a saturation of footage coming from Ukraine. Now, on the app and on the website, we've got tons of footage of Myanmar. We've got footage of police use of force. You can find footage of, India picking fights with Pakistan and vice versa. You can find footage of, who was it? The Chinese and Indians fighting each other with sticks. Is that who that was? That was a few months back. But this is what we do. It's what we're here for. Corrupta, thank you for the 20. Appreciate that very much. Sec, thank you for the 169. Well, Pontus, thank you for the 169 sec. I don't know what the sec is. David, thank you for the 20. This is my go-to info spot. Finally joined. Thanks, Ronnie. Thank you, sir. Thanks for being here. Demo, thank you very much for hitting the member button. Dude, appreciate that. Oh, yeah, we can't forget about the cartel stuff that we have up there. I mean, just, you know, on the homepage of the website right now. Here you go. Let me give you the homepage. Myanmar footage here, right? And got a bunch of Ukraine footage. There's going to be more Myanmar footage if I click see more. We cover use of force in war, wherever it is, just based on saturation, though. That's why we spend so much time talking about Ukraine on this show. Let's bring it up. All right. This next one is going to be not safe for work. Discretion advised on this one. And we're going to be going to Kostiantynivka. Kostiantynivka. I don't think I nailed that one. Kostiantynivka. It's in Donetsk. Yeah. Let me show it to you on Google Earth. This is where we're going, right here. And we're actually going right up here in the north of it. Kostiantynivka. Yeah. We're going to be about right here somewheres. All right. What you're going to see is a Russian drone. Excuse me. Yes, a Russian drone impacting a group of Ukrainians standing right next to a truck. Discretion's advised on this one. Frank, thank you for the 5. Tech Enjoyer, thank you for the 10. Thanks, guys. That was a whole group, yes. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, at least. Let's bring it up. We're shifting on our map again to... Actually, let me show you how far that is behind lines. So, Kostiantynivka here. You've got Klishivka and Andriivka that we were just in. And then that area to the north of Kostiantynivka. That distance there. Somewhere around 20 kilometers. Turn on the fortifications map. I should have had this on earlier when we were talking about Robotyne. This is one of the things that I like about Deep State. They provide a little bit, at least a little bit of fidelity on, you know, where the known fortifications are. And this is always going to be a bare minimum, something that's notable. You know, if there are fortifications that haven't been identified yet, those are also going to be on there. That's just the first line of defense. Well, you're kind of looking at all of the lines of defense here, right? Not these. These are like major roads or maybe railroads. I think that these white lines that don't turn off, this might be rail. I'm not sure. I can't get those to turn off for some reason. Anyway, we'll leave that filter on. But Kostiantynivka here. Now we're going to be headed to Prydinprovske, which is north of Bakhmut. Here. Where we're going to see what I would consider to be more not safe for work footage. So discretion once again advised. of Ukrainians riding on top of a vehicle. They get hit by a drone. JT, you and I are about in the same boat. So I follow along with just about every map, at least every well-published map. I mean, there are going to be plenty of individual maps. So when I say individual maps, you know, kind of a single person producing it, that might show a little bit more variance. But if you look at the major maps that are out there, ISW, Deep State, Geoconfirmed, Military Land, from a forward line perspective, they all are more or less identical. The reason I choose to use Deep State is some of the deeper functionality that it provides in the context that we can use. Say, for example, we wanted to see the total range of the M777. Well, I can pull that up on Deep State. You know, it's easy for me to pull that overlay, drop it to a position, and see how far out the M777 would fire. It also gives me the ability to, you know, turn on and off those fortifications, or to, you know, to check nuclear blast radiuses. That's why I choose to use Deep State. Some of those other maps have a few of those features, but this is the only one that does so, that I do find the battle lines change, ebb, and flow regardless of which direction. Just to give you guys a better understanding of why I choose to use Deep State. I follow quite a few different maps, but I have settled in on this one until a better one comes. I don't know. Now we're going to head to Luhansk, and we're going to play a little bit of... I shouldn't say... Well, tell me what happens here. So I'm not going to try and pronounce this one. But here's K2. So you've got a sole Russian. And what I was going to say is we're going to play a game of trying to figure out what the heck happens here. Radii. Okay. Nobody said I was smart. I'm pretty dumb. So... if you missed it, you missed it. So, the way we understand this is an anti-personnel mine here gets tripped, which then trips an anti-vehicle mine or an anti-tank mine. So you can see that small detonation there, which sets that off. What is the purpose of that? What do you mean by purpose of that? The placement of that anti-tank mine would make a whole lot of sense to me. You know, that is an approach avenue there between those two trees. So you've got a bit of a funnel, and on the sides, having anti-personnel mines for any dismounts that are following along with the vehicle. That would make sense. Let's bring it up. Now, let me show you where on the map that was really quick. You might have an understanding of why I wasn't going to try to pronounce it. We're going to stick with Google Earth for this one. There you are. So that took place right here. This little pass through here. Now this is what I put in my notes. Verknokamyanka. I wasn't even going to try that. Okay. Now we're going to shift off of the forward line, and we're actually going to look at some more footage from you. I mean, we've got plenty more footage to go. We've got another 20, 30 minutes, 15, 20 minutes worth of footage. We're going to go to Dnipro, the city. We'll go back to Deep State. You guys are? So we're shifting off the forward line here. We're going to jump into Dnipro. Here. Now, a series of missile strikes hit in Dnipro. Specifically targeting, you know, I'd assume, based on where the impacts are, the Yuzhny machine building plant. Here are those strikes.
Завод. Еще одна. Еще! Твою мать! Еще! Ёб твою мать! Еще!
Let's take you back to the map so you can get a better understanding of that again. And I also have an image that might help you understand where those strikes hit at. Stand by here. Now, there's a whole geolocation underground. I wouldn't even really call it an underground, but there are a lot of people on Twitter that are helping organizations like Geolocated find exactly where these things are taking place. In fact, I'm a big fan of Geolocated's. When I go to structure out this stream, one of the things that I do with the footage that I have is I go and I see, based on where I have it marked, or what the original source stated, to where they might have it. And oftentimes, I shouldn't say oftentimes, more times than you'd think, the location that I have from whomever I took it from, because again, at best, we're getting stuff secondhand, right? From a secondary source rather than a primary source. But more often than not, I have to adjust. And we have geolocations like this. Now we'll take you back to Google Earth quickly. Show you where that took place here. In Dnipro. And I'll do you one better. I'll pull it up with the coordinates that I thought I copied. Words are tough tonight, guys. I'm not sure what's going on. Just stupid. But here we are. These are your impact. This is the general area of your impacts. Now, if I recall correctly, the one thing that I don't have footage of, this is a high rise here. Right? So this high rise was hit, I think. And then the remainder of the impacts were here. I could be mixing that up with the strikes in Lviv, which we're about to watch now. So let's go back to our map. We were already on a map. Stupid idiot. Let's go to Lviv. Go into 2D mode. Out here. All the way to the west. Now, just in case you're not familiar with where Lviv is, I'm going to give you that on Deep State really quick. Here's Deep State's map. And generally speaking, I don't know. It's about forever away. How far is Lviv from the front line? To the closest, 674 kilometers to the closest part of the forward line. Now, this is the best video I could find of this. I couldn't find any footage of the strike itself. And all I can give you is what the area was reported as. This was reported as a kindergarten. Or at least near one. Now you can also see this high-rise, this residential building. Which I have either imagery or footage of. Footage, perfect. Here. Ukraine hiding in schools again, shame. Yeah, 630 some odd kilometers from the forward line is where they're all hiding. Hey, Yuri, what's going on, buddy? We're going to be watching some footage of yours here in a second. It's good to see you. But in Moscow, we've got some footage as well. Of drone strikes. Now, what's interesting to me here is who's filming this? Like look in the window here. Look in the window here. There's just like a guy nonchalant walking up to the window in the middle of Moscow after a huge explosion just hit. You can see him right here. Oh, this is like in somebody's house. Look in the reflection of the window. It's inside. It's not a security camera. Right here. Was he waiting for it? I don't know. All right, let's bring it up. So that's what I had for geolocatable footage. Now, I don't know. Yuri's in the chat. He might be able to help with at least one of these. But we're going to be jumping into the section that I call kind of general Ukraine. Now, when I say general Ukraine, it just means it's from Ukraine. Where exactly? Sometimes I'll have like an oblast, like Zaporizhzhia or, Donetsk. Some of these, that's the best that we can do. But the first is a Ukrainian team making contact with Russians and then immediately breaking contact. Stand by. Blinky screens. Is Yuri still in the chat? You still out there, buddy? Video's coming back for you guys now. Start it over. Music allowed? Probably not. The problem is it's mixed in with the context of the firefight, and towards the end here, you can just hear how much fire is coming in. So I'm trying to give you that whilst... You know what I mean? I'm trying to balance that. When we have, you know, footage, you know, the combat audio overlaid with the music, you still get the context, right? Audio provides a whole lot to understanding the situation. And with this specific video, as they were breaking contact there, the small arms fire actually ramps up quite a bit. And I was trying to give you that. The next one I would consider extremely not safe for work. I can't reiterate that enough on this one, guys. But what you're going to see here is effectively, we just watched Ukrainians, you know, moving to contact, you know, receiving contact, and then unmassing the area. We're about to see Russians moving to contact, and I do recommend some discretion when watching this one. Bring that back up. Pontus, thank you for the 99 SEK. What is the SEK? SEK. What currency is that? Thank you very much for it, one way or another. Do you think we've seen Russia at 100% in the war, excluding nuclear? Oh, US dollar to SEK is 10 to 1. Okay, all right, that's helpful. Yes and no. Yes, relative to the combat power that I think that they can sustain without severely degrading what they have at home, their capabilities at home, at least for the first little while. But then you start to wonder whether or not the projections or our understanding of Russia's combat power was even accurate in the first place, right? Russia for a long time was considered, you know, the big bear. A lot of people say that Russia still, even to this day, hasn't committed its most capable troops. I mean, I would disagree with that. I think from a mobilization perspective, were Russia to declare, you know, kind of a full all-out mobilization, that they could throw quite a few more. I mean, we've seen them do that before. There's a historical precedent for that. So related to their current combat power, I'd say, yeah, they've probably thrown, you know, quite a bit, if not quite a bit more than they ever really expected to have to. Can they field more if necessary? Yeah, absolutely. Between conscription, mobilization, they can absolutely throw millions more into the fight were they to choose to do so. Now, the quality of those troops is going to be an entirely different subject whatsoever. That's a much longer conversation for folks that have a much better understanding of Russia from a military perspective than I do. I'm really just here covering the footage. You know, I know I say that a lot, but it's I think it's important for me to continue to you know, beat that horse. I'm ultimately here to document with the team war all over the globe. Now, what comes along with that is an understanding via researching context, but I still don't make my career in understanding Russia's combat capabilities. So if you ask me from an ignorance perspective, I think they have allocated much more to the quote-unquote special military operation than they ever expected to have to. and in fact probably went into their back pocket. But do I think that they could still field quite a bit more? Yeah, I do. You know, we've seen them reach into a bag of tricks and pull out millions of soldiers before. All right, Yuri. I don't think Yuri's here anymore, but I want to show you guys something. This is what it looks like to hit a mine from in. Now, if you guys are ever looking for additional context, especially for these that we have published on the site, this is actually a part of a much longer documentary that Josh has linked to here. Right, you also get to look at Josh's big, handsome, tall glass of big red water here. But this documentary, I absolutely recommend taking a watch. I can copy that link for you really quick and send you over there now if you'd like to. Because we only have 2 or 3 more videos. It was a landmine, guys. All right. Now, we've seen quite a bit of footage of Ukrainians being on the receiving end of Lancet drones, Ukrainians in the open. What you're going to have here is our Russians in the open conducting a KA-52. Now, that KA-52 gets hit by a suicide drone. Don't have a great location for this. But here's the footage. Yuri said it wasn't a mine. Oh, okay. He'll probably send me a message or something. Not a mine, said Yuri. Got it. Appreciate it, guys. All right. Yuri knows when to duck. Almost as much as Yuri. Should be nowhere close to that. Should be nowhere close. So that's it. That's what I have for you guys on Ukraine tonight. A lot of ups and downs tonight on the technical side, on my brain trying to process what I want to say. But we covered quite a bit of ground. We talked a little bit about F-16s to open up the stream tonight. I shared with you guys, just to hit it again, that the first week of September, I'll be competing in the Proving Grounds. We can talk more about that over on the other stream if you'd like to. But I'll have a special guest competing with me. I think that's going to be super fun. We saw assaults in Robotyne. We saw assaults in Urozhaine. I do research these pronunciations, and in my brain, I'm like, oh, that's easy. I got that. And then when I try to say it, it sounds like, I'm not going to tell you what it sounds like, but it ain't good. I do have one more bit of footage for you before we end the stream tonight, though. Thanks very much for being here. This one's from the history books. I think it's probably one of the wildest videos that I can recall of the uses of naval mines in Croatia. Or excuse me, Croatians in Bosnia. I'm out of here, guys. Thanks very much for being here. Thank you very much to Yuri for stopping by. We appreciate you, dude. It's kind of wild showing you on the screen getting blown up while you're in the chat. I feel like we've done that quite a few times now. So that's, if that could stop happening. But anyway, I'll see you over on the other stream. If you guys swing by, it'll automatically redirect you. Here's that last bit of footage. You're going to want to stick around for it. Good night. Stay informed.
Porinuti I na 1746 metara visine. Ovo je moguće prvi jedinstveni slučaj da se ona koristi to na visini od 1746 metara.
A kakva je to mina?
To se zove morska mina ili protubrodska mina.
Recite, to je već je iskušano njeno djelovanje.
Već je iskušano njeno djelovanje i ona ima veliki efekt je pokazala do sada.
Hvala vam lijepo. Evo.
Sopuštenje, pazi. Nemoj ovako
bez brige, mane.
Onda ću ja pornuti minu umjesto sa par metara visine morske broda, ja ću je pornuti sa ove velike kote.
Pustimo doni kuglu i sve, boga.
It's my favorite part of that. Release the unintelligible sphere. Hold on.
Pustimo doni kuglu i sve, boga. To je kad su postavljeni bombe.
Kad si bacala noge, kad stisili šumu, kad si pognula?
Pizon, da su poraža vrijeme Japanu su ići.
Ali prebit će se oni filtri.
Kaže, nek šljem stavi, molim te.
Lezi! Lezi!
Plin se, ili...
Lezi gori! Lezi! Gledaj što iđu. Lezi gori! Ne gledamo! Lezi!
Good night.